If you've ever worked overnight, you already know something feels different after 2 a.m. The buildings feel emptier, the silence feels heavier, and sometimes you start noticing things that shouldn't exist. Tonight's stories come from people who worked the night shift and experienced something they still can't explain. Story 1. The last bus of Route 12. I debated posting this for a long time because honestly, I still don't fully know what happened. And before anyone says it, yeah, I know how this sounds. I've heard every explanation already. Sleep deprivation, hallucinations, stress, maybe. But I drove overnight buses in Memphis for almost 11 years, and I've seen drunk people, fights, crackheads, people screaming at invisible things. None of that ever bothered me. This did, because whatever got on my bus that November night wasn't normal. I worked Route 12 almost every night. Anybody who's worked overnight transit knows certain routes just feel different after 2 a.m. The city stops feeling alive. Streetlights flicker for no reason. Gas stations look abandoned even when they're open, and every person standing alone at a bus stop suddenly feels unsettling. Route 12 went through older parts of the city near the industrial district by the river. A lot of empty buildings, closed laundromats, broken signs, half-lit streets. Most nights after midnight, the bus was practically empty. Just me, engine noise, and windshield wipers scraping rain off the glass for hours. The first time I saw him was during a thunderstorm, and I remember the exact time because I checked the dashboard clock right before pulling over. 2:13 a.m. I was coming up on an old stop near a laundromat that had been shut down for years. Nobody ever waited there anymore, but standing under the streetlight was a man in a grey hoodie. Tall, thin, hands in his pockets, completely motionless. Rain was pouring hard enough to flood the curb, and this guy wasn't even reacting to it. Didn't wave, didn't step forward, nothing. Just standing there, staring towards the bus. I almost kept driving. I really wish I had. But I stopped anyway and opened the doors. The second he stepped inside, I got this horrible feeling in my stomach. Not fear exactly, more like the feeling you get when something is deeply wrong, but you can't explain why yet. I said, "Evening." No response. The guy didn't even acknowledge me. He just walked down the aisle slowly with his hood covering most of his face. And I swear to God, his footsteps made almost no sound. That's what stuck with me first. Wet shoes on a bus floor should make noise. But all I could hear was rain hitting the windshield. I watched him in the overhead mirror while he walked all the way to the back row and sat beside the window. Then he stopped moving completely, head lowered, hands folded together, just sitting there. I drove the route like normal, but I kept checking the mirror every few minutes. He never moved. Not once. No phone, no coughing, no shifting around, nothing. At some point I realized something else too. I never saw him breathe. Now maybe I just missed it. Maybe the lighting was weird. But I remember staring into that mirror thinking, why does this guy look frozen? The route ended near the river warehouses. Last stop. Usually passengers got off quickly because there was nothing out there except loading docks and old industrial buildings. I parked the bus, opened the doors, and looked back. The seat was empty. I actually stood there confused for a second because I never saw him walk past me. There's only one exit on that bus. No rear doors, no hidden exit. Nothing. I walked to the back, checking every row, thinking maybe the guy laid down or something. Nobody there. No wet footprints either. That part bothered me more than anything. The floor should have been soaked from the rain outside, but the aisle behind him looked completely dry. I tried convincing myself he slipped off while I was distracted, but deep down, I knew I would have noticed. The next night, I worked again, and at exactly 2:13 a.m., he was waiting at the same stop, same hoodie, same posture, standing beneath the same flickering streetlight. That's when I started getting genuinely nervous. I remember my hands tightening on the steering wheel before I even opened the doors. Part of me wanted to drive straight past him, but another part of me felt weirdly embarrassed, like I was overreacting. So I let him on again. Same thing. Silent, slow steps, back row seat, motionless. This went on for almost a week, every single night. 2:13 a.m., always waiting, always sitting in the back, always disappearing before the route ended. I stopped sleeping properly after a few days. I'd catch myself checking the mirrors in my own car while driving home. Sometimes I'd wake up thinking I saw somebody sitting in the corner of my bedroom. Then came the night I quit. Heavy rain again. Thunder loud enough to shake the windows. I already felt sick driving toward that stop, and right on schedule. There he was, waiting beneath the light. The doors opened. He stepped inside, and this time when he walked past me, I smelled something. Not rot exactly, more like damp concrete after rain. Cold, earthy, wrong. I watched him sit in the back again through the mirror. Then I forced myself to stop looking. I kept my eyes on the road for maybe 10 minutes. That's all. Then I checked the mirror again. The back seat was empty. Immediately, my stomach dropped. No stop request, no footsteps, nothing. I remember whispering, "No." Then I looked up higher into the overhead mirror and saw him standing directly behind my seat, close enough that if I turned around, our faces probably would have touched. I slammed the brakes so hard the bus fishtailed across the wet street. People screamed somewhere behind me. The steering wheel jerked sideways, and for 1 second, just one, I saw his reflection clearly. Grey skin, sunken eyes, and the widest smile I've ever seen in my life. Then the bus crashed into the guardrail. When police reviewed the security footage later, they told me something I still think about almost every night. At 2:13 a.m., the doors opened at the laundromat stop, but nobody got on the bus. According to the cameras, I'd been alone. The entire route. Most grocery stores feel strange after closing, but according to former employees of a small store outside Jackson, Mississippi, there was one announcement nobody wanted to hear after 3 a.m. Story 2. Aisle 9. I used to work overnight stocking shelves at a grocery store outside Jackson, Mississippi, back in 2021. And before anybody asks, no, this isn't some creepypasta thing. I'm not trying to go viral. I'm not writing a story. I genuinely still think about this almost every night. I ended up quitting 2 days later. The store was called Mercy Mart. Small place right off the highway near one of those exits where there's basically a gas station, a fast food place, and nothing else for miles. During the daytime it felt normal enough, but overnight, completely different atmosphere. Anybody who's worked night shift retail knows what I mean. Grocery stores after midnight feel wrong, not scary exactly. Just empty in a way that doesn't feel natural. The lights hum louder, the aisles feel longer, and every little sound suddenly stands out. A shopping cart rolling somewhere in the distance, a freezer door creaking open, footsteps you can't immediately place. Most nights there were only 3 of us in the building, me, One cashier and the shift manager hiding in the office doing paperwork. That was it. The store closed at midnight, but we stayed until 6 in the morning stocking inventory. Honestly, the job was boring more than anything. Throw headphones in, open boxes, face products on shelves, go home. Simple. The first weird thing happened maybe 3 weeks after I started. My name's Nate, by the way. And I was stocking soup cans near the pharmacy section around 3 in the morning when the overhead speakers suddenly crackled with static. Didn't think much of it at first because the PA system was old and constantly messed up. Then I heard a woman's voice say, "Cleanup needed in aisle 9. At first I just froze because we didn't have an aisle 9. The store only had 8 aisles. I knew that because stocking assignments were literally organized by aisle numbers every night. 1 through 8. No 9. I actually laughed to myself because I thought maybe somebody pre-recorded the wrong announcement somehow. But something about the voice bothered me immediately. It sounded distorted, like somebody speaking underwater, or through a broken radio. I walked toward the registers and asked the cashier if she heard it. She looked at me completely confused. Heard what? The announcement. What announcement? I remember just staring at her for a second. The speakers above us buzzed softly, but everything else was dead silent. I honestly started wondering if I imagined it. Maybe my earbuds glitched. Maybe I was tired. So I dropped it. The next night, though, it happened again. Exactly 3:07 a.m. Static burst through the speakers loud enough to make me jump. Then the same voice said, "Cleanup needed in aisle 9. This time it sounded clearer, closer somehow. I immediately pulled my earbuds out and looked around the store. Everything felt off. The fluorescent lights seemed dimmer than normal. Even the freezers sounded quieter, like the entire building was listening. Then I noticed something strange in the back hallway near the employee lockers. There was a light on at the very end. I'd worked there almost a month and never saw that light turned on before. The hallway itself led to the loading dock, employee lockers, and storage rooms. Nothing else. But standing there that night, I noticed another hallway beyond it. And I swear to God, that hallway was not supposed to be there. I know how insane that sounds. But the corridor looked longer than normal somehow, like the building itself stretched deeper into darkness than it should have. The overhead speaker crackled again. Cleanup needed in aisle 9. This time the voice almost sounded irritated, like whoever was speaking expected me to answer. I don't even know why I walked toward the hallway. Curiosity, I guess. Or maybe I just wanted to prove to myself I wasn't losing my mind. The closer I got, the colder the air became. Not freezer cold, different, damp, like standing inside a basement. Then I reached the end of the corridor and saw it. Another aisle, fully lit. Long fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, while shelves stretched farther into the darkness than any aisle in the actual store. And hanging above it was a sign that read, Aisle 9. I remember my stomach dropping immediately. At first it looked normal, fully stocked shelves, boxes, products. Then I noticed the employees. There were maybe 5 or 6 people farther down the aisle stocking shelves silently, all wearing old Mercy Mart uniforms I'd never seen before, dark green instead of blue. Nobody spoke, nobody looked at each other. They just moved slowly, placing items onto shelves one by one. And something about the way they moved felt horribly wrong. Too stiff, too precise, like watching mannequins imitate human behavior. I should have left immediately. Instead, I stood there staring like an idiot. One of the employees reached for a box, and I realized his movements looked delayed somehow, like frames dropping in a video. Then every single worker stopped moving at the exact same time. Silence filled the aisle instantly. I mean, complete silence. No buzzing lights, no freezer hum, nothing. Then slowly, every employee turned towards me together, smiling. I've never seen smiles like that before, too wide, too still. None of them blinked, and their eyes looked completely black beneath the fluorescent lights. The overhead speaker crackled again, but now the voice sounded excited. "Cleanup needed in aisle 9. That snapped me out of it. I ran. I turned around and sprinted back down the hallway as fast as I could. And I swear on my life, I heard footsteps behind me. Not one set, dozens. Fast, getting closer. The hallway lights started shutting off one by one behind me while I ran. Pop, pop, pop. Darkness chasing me down the corridor. I burst back onto the sales floor, gasping so hard I nearly collapsed. The cashier looked up from her phone like I was insane. "What's wrong with you?" I turned around immediately, expecting to see people running after me, but the hallway looked completely normal again. No extra aisle, no strange lights, nothing. The manager checked security footage later because I refused to calm down. And, according to the cameras, I never left frozen foods for almost 47 minutes. I stood completely motionless, staring at the wall beside the freezer doors. And the worst part, right before the footage ended, I slowly started smiling. Security guards spend hours watching empty buildings at night, and after enough overnight shifts, you start noticing things in the cameras that shouldn't be there. Final story. Camera 14. I've tried explaining this to people before, and nobody believes me. Honestly, I probably wouldn't believe it either if somebody else told me. But I know what I saw on those monitors, and I know I wasn't asleep. Back in 2022, I took an overnight security job in downtown Nashville after my divorce. I was broke, needed fast money, and the company hired basically anybody with a pulse. The building was called Ash Grove Financial Center, 23 floors, old office tower, mostly abandoned. During the day, there were still a few businesses operating on the lower levels, law offices, insurance places, stuff like that. But most of the building was empty. The upper floors had been shut down for years because of flooding damage and black mold problems or something. At night, the place felt dead. Not quiet, dead. Like the building itself had been abandoned in a hurry and everyone forgot to tell the lights to shut off. My security office sat in the basement near the freight elevators. Tiny room, no windows, just old monitors glowing in the dark all night. Half the cameras barely worked. Some flickered constantly. Some showed static every few minutes. And one camera feed permanently showed an empty hallway with water stains running down the walls. The guy training me barely explained anything. He looked exhausted the entire shift, like he hadn't slept in weeks. Right before leaving that first night, he stopped at the doorway and said something weird. "If camera 14 comes on," then he paused. "Don't stare at it too long." I laughed because I thought he was joking. He didn't laugh back. Then he just walked out. At first the job was boring as hell. Most nights I watched YouTube on my phone or drank gas station coffee trying not to fall asleep. Every hour I'd walk the lower floors checking doors and stairwells. That was it. No people, no movement, nothing. Just empty offices and fluorescent lights buzzing overhead. The first weird thing happened on my 5th shift. I remember the exact time because I looked directly at the monitor clock when the screen flickered. 1:44 a.m. One of the blank monitors suddenly turned on by itself. Static flashed across the screen for maybe 2 seconds before the image stabilized. The label beneath the feed read, Camera 14. Immediately I frowned because I'd already memorized most of the building cameras by then. There was no camera 14. The hallway on screen didn't even look familiar. Dim red emergency lights glowed overhead, while old office doors lined both sides of the corridor. The carpet looked stained and ancient. Wallpaper peeled off the walls in long strips. The whole place looked older than the rest of the building somehow, like stepping backward in time. I remember leaning closer to the monitor trying to figure out where the camera was located. Then somebody walked across the hallway, a man carrying a cardboard box, business suit, loosened tie, head lowered. At first I thought maybe maintenance workers got trapped upstairs or something. Then another person crossed the hallway, then another. Office workers, silent, moving slowly beneath the red lights. And I swear this is true. None of them looked normal, not physically, just off. Their movements seemed delayed, like old VHS footage skipping frames. Nobody spoke, nobody acknowledged each other. They just wandered through the hallway carrying papers and boxes like they were still working inside the building. I grabbed the floor plans beside the desk, trying to figure out where the hell this hallway was. Nothing matched. No hallway in the building looked like that. Then one of the workers stopped moving. A woman standing near the far end of the corridor slowly turned towards the camera. I still remember how cold my stomach felt the second she looked directly into the lens. She just stood there smiling, motionless, like she knew I was watching her. Then the monitor exploded into static, loud static. I nearly fell out of the chair. When the picture cleared again, the hallway was empty. No workers, nothing. The next night, it happened again. Exactly 1:44 a.m. Camera 14 switched on by itself. This time I already felt nervous before even looking at the screen. Again the hallway appeared. Again office workers wandered silently through the corridor. And this time, I noticed something worse. Some of them looked wet, like they'd been standing in rainwater. Dark stains covered parts of their clothes. One guy limped slowly past the camera, holding papers against his chest. Another woman stood completely still, facing the wall. The longer I watched, the more wrong everything felt. Then suddenly, one of the workers stopped moving. A man in a security uniform. My security uniform. He slowly turned toward the camera, and my entire body went cold. It was me. Older maybe, more exhausted, eyes sunken dark beneath the fluorescent lights. But it was my face. Exactly my face. The older version of me stared directly into the camera for several seconds, then slowly raised one finger to his lips, like he was warning me to stay quiet. At that exact moment, every monitor in the room flickered. All of them. The office lights dimmed hard enough that I thought the power died. Then every camera feed switched on at once. Hallways, parking garage, stairwells, elevators. And standing somewhere inside almost every single camera was the older version of me, watching, completely still. The radios on the desk suddenly burst into static so loud I ripped my headset off immediately. Then underneath the static, I heard voices, whispering, dozens of them. I couldn't make out words, just overlapping voices talking all at once. That's when I finally panicked. I ran out of the security office and sprinted toward the basement stairwell. And I swear to God, I heard footsteps following me, fast, Not one person, multiple people. The hallway lights started shutting off behind me while I ran, one after another, darkness chasing me through the basement. I quit before sunrise, didn't even finish the shift. A few months later, one of my old co-workers called me after demolition crews started tearing the building apart. Apparently, workers discovered an entire sealed office floor hidden behind concrete walls above the 19th floor. Old desks, rotting paperwork, ancient computers, and at the very end of one hallway. They found a rusted security camera mounted to the ceiling. The label on the side still read, Camera 14. If you've ever worked overnight somewhere, what's the creepiest thing you've experienced after closing? Leave your story in the comments below. And if you're still awake, there are more stories waiting for you here on VHS After Midnight.